Hello, welcome back to what we call again, Heavy Subjects podcast. Yeah, that one. New episode of Heavy Subjects, and today we're continuing to talk about death metal, aren't we, Reagan? But we're going to talk about the death metal band that play death metal that are called Death, which is a really good name.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Death, if you know them, you'll understand why they are one of the biggest icons in extreme metal. I'd argue of metal as a whole. Such an important, innovative band. And while we're on the subject of the name, actually, I get, you must have seen a lot of people going like, a death metal band called Death, what a great name. But you have to kind of feel like, you have to kind of remember at the time when Chuck Schuldiner, the kind of creative force, the frontman behind Death, when he started this project, death metal wasn't so much of a thing. It wasn't, the term death metal almost didn't really exist. So he wasn't kind of going, I'm going to call my death metal band Death. He called it Death, I believe, because his brother passed away. And he thought about the idea of death as a concept and thought, I want to make something, I want to channel my grief and rage into something positive, something creative. And I think he achieved it.
That makes sense. Am I replying to this? I don't know if you're in the monologuing.
I was going to ask you a question, actually. What do you, like, if someone has never heard of the band Death, how would you explain them?
That's a tricky one, actually. Well, they're death metal bands. I would say they're more progressive death. Sorry, it took me a long time to apply that. My brain went like, had like a lockdown moment. I would say they're obviously the first death metal band to exist properly. It's a proper pure death metal band. Because I do believe Sweet Bloody Gore is the first death metal album. I know you disagree, but we can get to that. Yeah. However, I mean, let's face it, Death is Chuck, and Chuck is Death. Like, it's synonymous with each other. Like, no Chuck, there's no Death. It's as simple as that. Apart from that one time in 1992, which we'll get to. There was a mutiny afoot. But that aside, I mean, what else do I say to that? It's a death metal band that basically the first ever death metal band to that lead into other territories like progressive death and some of the finest, even melodic death I've ever heard in a band.
Yeah. I think just with metal in general, I mean, I've kind of been aware of them for a long time, and there's been certain songs of theirs I've gone, oh, that's really good, or like but recently when I kind of dived into like all the albums and listened to all of them in order multiple times to prepare for this episode, some of them I'd already heard. I hadn't listened to every single one all the way through until quite recently. But they really have become one of my favorite bands in metal, probably ever.
I'll be honest, I kind of agree. I feel like they're one of the best bands of all time. Like, not even just death metal, just bands.
Yeah, pretty much.
Let's be honest. Chuck is phenomenally like an amazing songwriter.
Yeah, just such an incredible musician, a great songwriter, hell of a vocalist, and just a really interesting person. But there's a lot of debate over what is truly the first death metal album or band or whatever. I would argue that Seven Churches by Possessed, as I've already kind of stated, is the first death metal album. I call it death metal because to me it's too heavy for thrash. That's just my opinion. But if there's one person who I can point at and go, he invented death metal, it's Chuck. Because Mantis, the Mantis demos, which were basically Death before they were called Death, that is death metal, and that's like 83. I don't think there's much death metal before then. Venom, we're getting close, but it
was 84 actually, wasn't it?
I thought it was 83. Some of them. Oh, I don't know.
Could be 83. Either way, 84. It was before Seven Churches.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah, and those Mantis demos, they're death metal. So I would say that Chuck invented death metal.
Oh yeah, the Chuck is the godfather of death metal. We kind of agree with that. I think for me, I just Seven Churches to me isn't I wouldn't call it pure death metal. I think the first ever pure death metal album is Scream Bloody Gore. I feel like for me, from my perspective, I see Seven Churches as a proto death metal, where I feel like it's kind of like thrash played so heavy it's got elements of death. But I just don't feel like there's enough death metal elements in it to be a death metal. It's kind of got this blend between the two. Almost, I would call it a death. If any, I wouldn't like be against calling it a death thrash album, like thrash metal mixed with death, or like maybe death and thrash, whatever you want to call it.
Deadly thrash.
Deadly thrash. I mean, it's heavy as shit.
Yeah,
exactly. It's heavy as shit at the time.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely death metal elements, but I don't think there's enough criteria to be purely death metal. Sense. That's just how I see Seven Churches. Doesn't make it any less of a good album because it's a fantastic album. I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah,
but I do believe Chuck is the first with this Scream Bloody Gore.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I love Seven, but whether or not, like, whatever genre it is, Seven Churches is fantastic. One of my favorite extreme metal albums. One of the best metal albums of the 80s, I'd say. But yeah, since we're on that subject, then, do we want to talk about Scream Bloody Gore?
Actually, could I go? Can we talk about the early incarnations and then what led into Scream Bloody Gore? Do you think that might be better?
Yeah, let's do that.
A bit more give a bit more context. So, I'll go with the flow. So we know that he formed Death in '83, and the first members of the band were Chuck. What do you pronounce him? Something Lee. Cameron Lee.
Cameron Lee. I think that's right. Yeah.
Something like that. I might be wrong if I am. I apologize. And obviously, there's Rick was not Rick Ross. That's a very clear distinction.
That'd be a very different band here.
Yeah. Anyway, they formed in '83, but apparently they briefly split up. This is why and then when they reformed, they came back as Death. That was like I think late '84, early '85. Can't remember exactly. But then Ross left in '85 after recording another demo called Infernal Death. Is that right?
Yeah. It is Cam Lee. Yeah, you're right.
It's Cam Lee. Okay, yeah.
Cam Lee, cool. Yeah, that's my bad.
No, it's fine. I mean, I wasn't sure, to be honest. Like, sometimes I doubt myself. But anyway, okay, it's all good. So, Roz left. If I get any wrong, just stop me. '85, don't know when. But it was after recording Infernal Death, the demo. Mm-hmm. Then Scott Colson from Repulsion, is that right? Came in as the guitarist, and then Matt Olivo came in as bassist, who was from Genocide in May of '85.
Yeah.
We're gonna find out by discussing this video how much of a convoluted mess the members are.
Yeah, it's just easy to say. Look, it's Chuck. Death is Chuck's project.
It literally is. It's no one else. He is Death. Like,
it's always interesting.
There's no one else who can go play the name.
Yeah. It's always interesting watching footage of. There's a great performance on YouTube of their Dynamo Festival from 1998. So it was the year before Slipknot were there, which is another incredible performance, which is all on YouTube, by the way.
One of the best live shows ever, the Death 98 one you're talking about, by the way, I think.
1998 in. I can't remember it's at the Dynamo Festival, and they play like a bunch of stuff from like all 7 albums. It's interesting watching that lineup play songs that they didn't write or play on originally, and seeing again footage of the band. The lineup changed over the years, and seeing how different members play different songs and how it kind of changes. Because Richard Christie playing something like Crystal Mountain is incredible to watch because he's an amazing drummer. He doesn't play the same way Gene Hoglan did on the album, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm already talking about Symbolic, but we'll get there.
Oh yeah. No, but I completely get you. It's a really good point, and I love that. Don't be apologizing. Anyway, we'll stick to in May of 85.
Yeah.
1985. So Lee later left, apparently with Cam Lee, and struggled to replace him. But then the latter two sides left, Matt and Scott. So Chuck relocated to San Francisco. He's going back. This is going to be a bit of backwards and forwards here.
Sure.
Eric, I think his name's Eric Mead. Does I pronounce it? Might be wrong.
Eric.
He was the former drummer from DRI, Dirty Rotten Imbeciles.
Oh, really?
Oh no. Eric Mead, and no. That's Eric Gretsch, who also joined the band, was the former drummer from DRI. Sorry, I'm getting confused.
Okay.
They got Eric in the name. Eric Mead was the other one. Eric Gretsch was the drummer from the DRI, but they both joined while he was in San Francisco, and then the Death lineup when became a trio at that point.
Yeah.
So it's just, again, it's convoluted, so I'm trying to remember it all. I might look like a gawk trying to remember this. I'm like trying to reach in the files of my brain. So yeah, it was a release. They released Back from the Dead, the demo, as a trio. Later that year, they would leave the band and Chuck returned to Florida, if I remember correctly. So it's still in 85, I'm assuming. That, yeah, we will be, and Dev taken a brief hiatus in early night. Oh yeah. Dev took an early hiatus in early 86. Again. Then he moved back to Florida in March. Started a new incarnation with Chris Rayford as a two-piece. While Chuck was doing bass duties at the time. He then issued Mutilation in April. Then Dev got a signing with Combat Records, which led them to Death as well and to be inside. They briefly played with Steve DiGiorgio. Does I pronounce DiGiorgio?
Steve DiGiorgio.
DiGiorgio. Okay, Steve DiGiorgio. And the following November, they did Scream Bloody Gore, which was then issued in the following May of 87. So they started recording it of November of 86.
Yeah.
And before it was released, they briefly had a second guitarist called John Hand. But I think he was on the album. I'm not sure, but he was definitely I don't know if that. I can't remember actually.
He's credited on the album. He's not actually on it. Chuck did the vocals, guitar, and bass for all of it, and the drummer Chris Reifert played all the drums. So technically, that album is just two people playing on it. But John Hand is credited because at that time he was an official member.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because I remember someone saying that most of Scream Bloody Gore was essentially Chuck. But I wasn't sure if John Hand had any say or do any recordings in it at all. I wouldn't look that up. If
you think like there's on that album the instruments, vocals, lead guitar, rhythm guitar, bass, drums. 4 out of those 5 slots are Chuck. So
yeah, exactly. And Chuck basically was the main force in that album.
I'm pretty sure he wrote all. Yeah, it says here he wrote all of it on his own as well. So
there you go. It's basically almost a solo. It's like almost a solo project with another drummer. I don't know how you want to look at it.
I think he really liked the idea of having it be a band, and he never really had much of an ego about himself, did he?
No, that's true. That's what's good about Chuck. Anyway, we're in Scream Bloody Gore now. I mean, the fact that Chuck did this on his own is absolute. Well, not on his own, but like most of it on his own was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here.
And I think we should talk about what we actually think about it when we come to find out where it sits in both of our rankings. But I mean, stylistically, 1987, holy shit. At the time, you had stuff. I mean, the 2 biggest bands, the 3 biggest metal artists in the world at that point would have been Ozzy Osbourne, Metallica, Iron Maiden.
Maybe Megadeth at a push.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
maybe not as mainstream.
In general, Yeah, like thrash metal was really big at the time. And you
Mm.
think something like Slayer were probably the most heavy band that were well known at the time.
Yeah, yeah. If you
And
discount
then,
Bathory.
true. I'd argue
Or Venom.
Bathory, yeah, actually that's true. Venom were bigger than people remember them at the time in their prime. They were actually really huge.
Yeah,
Um,
they were.
but yeah, like so Scream Bloody Gore comes out. People must have just thought, what the fuck is this? Like it's so I mean,
Yeah.
subgenre wise, it's death metal. Someone said,
Oh, it's
"What is
pure.
this?" It's death metal,
Mm.
plain and simple. And
Oh yeah, for sure.
just
No argument.
people have made the argument, "Oh, it's not as good as the other ones because it's not as sophisticated." And I kind of feel like there's something about this album that just has a kind of purity to it, almost like an
Yeah.
innocence, just because the lyrics are so just like I don't know, juvenile sometimes. Like, but it's the same reason
Yeah.
people like horror films. It's fun. It's a really fun album. Um,
I think for me,
yeah,
the thing that stands out the most is the artwork. It's fucking amazing.
it's so good. It's one of the best. I said we won't talk about how much we like the album yet, but I will just say that the artwork for Scream Bloody Gore is one of the most iconic and greatest covers in metal album history. And in my opinion, it should be hung in galleries next to like Master of Puppets and Number of the Beast.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I think it's even better than some of them. Like, it's better than Master of Puppets album cover.
I think it depends on because that cover really reflects the music, and I kind of feel like the Scream Bloody Gore cover really reflects the music. But something like,
True.
I mean, my personal favorite Iron Maiden cover, not necessarily album, my favorite cover is Power Slave, and I think it really fits the music. So I think all three are good, really great examples of the cover really fits the aesthetic.
Oh yeah, no, there's nothing necessarily wrong with Master of Puppets cover. It's still
Mm,
iconic and everyone knows what it is. But I think from my perspective, I still know the Scream Bloody Gold cover just captivated me. Second I saw it, I was like, look, I remember when I first saw the cover, and I was just as the music was playing, I was just looking at every detail of the cover, like what, like
yeah,
every inch of what was drawn, just kind of captivated me. Where Master of Puppets is like, yeah, I mean, it's good, it works for the album, but it just didn't pull me in like that, if you know what I mean. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, and the artwork was done by Ed Repka. He's done stuff like Megadeth, Dark Angel. Um,
Mm. Which we'll mention Dark Angel again,
yeah.
actually.
Oh yeah, yeah. We will. Yeah. Yeah. Look at that. He's done what's that for 3 inches of blood, Atheist, Austrian Death Machine. Please come to
Which Three
Buzzcocks because
Inches of Blood
you
cover
guys are
did he
amazing.
do?
Advance and Vanquish.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I
His
really
his
like Three
most
Inches of Blood.
his most well known ones are probably like off the top of my head, probably like the Peace Cells cover and the Rust in Peace cover by Megadeth.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, that's a classic one.
Right, we're back after those technical difficulties. Uh, that was
I got the
that was
same
on.
shirt on again to keep it consistent.
I haven't because it's been boiling hot here in the UK, and I've been sat around shirtless most of the time. It's only really when I'm actually on camera I bother to put a shirt on because it's just been
Yeah.
so hot.
And if you
Um,
do want him on camera with a shirt off, subscribe to
you
Ruby's
need to pay for
OnlyFans
that.
page.
You need to donate to our Patreon for the exclusive content. Um, so where were we, Reagan, with a discussion about the mighty death and the almighty Chuck Schuldiner?
Well, we were talking about the Scream Bloody Gore artwork.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think we both agree it's one of the most iconic and greatest covers in metal,
Yeah, no, I agree. It's fantastic.
and it fits the
Um,
music pretty much perfectly.
what was the name of the guy who did it? He's gone out of my head.
Travis Smith.
That was it. And he did the 3 Inches of Blood, didn't he?
He did 3 Inches of Blood. He's done pretty much every. I think he's literally done every Opeth album
Every open.
from Still Life onwards. So he didn't do the first
Ah,
three, but the other including the new one coming out. He's done the other 11.
Oh wow.
So yeah, he's done tons of stuff. Like he did the Nightmare cover for Avenged Sevenfold.
Excuse me. Sorry.
He did
Yes.
that. He
Pardon me.
did yeah, just tons of stuff. But he's an amazing artist. He's one of my favorite artists for that sort of style.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I love the different imagery he goes with as well. Like the Scream Bloody Gore one feels very, you know, what do you put, intimidating and scary. Or you could do like Opeth where it's dark and beautiful. The Three Inches of Blood one. What was there? Something Vanquish?
Actually, I just realized my mistake. Sorry. So Ed Repka did the first 3 Death albums, and he did like Megadeth and 3 Inches of Blood. Travis Smith, I'm getting confused now. Travis Smith did the artwork for
Oh.
Sound of Perseverance. So yeah, sorry about that, guys. It's
Yeah. So
Ed
my
Repka.
I'm not too familiar. Sorry. Um, my bad. Advance and Vanquish by Three Inches of Blood then was the one I was talking about anyway.
Yeah,
It's kind of like the Lord. It's got that Lord of the Rings feel to it, which is really cool.
yeah. Repka tends to do kind of almost comic book kind of stuff, but like it's always exaggerated characters. Like it might be someone like a Conan the Barbarian sort of fantasy role playing person who's got an unrealistic amount of massive muscles, or like
Yeah.
the
All the
Scream
steroids.
Bloody Gore cover isn't subtle, is it? It's a bunch of screaming skeletons. Well, I don't know. Maybe
Yes.
I like to imagine in my head they're all just going like, "Oh, this wine is fantastic, a fine vintage," and he's just like so happy. My favorite one is the
Yeah.
skeleton is just like with his
Yeah, you
tongue
get them
out.
all
It's so...
little personalities, seeing what they're all thinking in their own head. I like that. It's funny. I'm going to quickly look at the cover again because I think it's really cool. I like the one that's kind of like not the main purple skeleton, but the other middle skeleton towards the right. Kind of just has a sort of look on him like,
Let me have a
oh, he
look.
just realized his wife's left him.
Hang on, I've got to find it now. I've got it in my head, but I can't remember the details. Yeah. Oh, the guy on the main guy's on his right.
Yeah, the middle right, not the main guy, but the other guy.
Yeah, who's just
No,
like,
middle
oh
left.
no,
Damn it! I got the wrong right
oh.
side. Yeah, it's like, oh, he left me. This wine is my only friend. All the other friends are like, it's okay, mate. She wasn't worth it.
Oh, they're just a bunch of old mates.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
Yeah,
we'll move on from the artwork now and
sure.
go to the album itself, like the music itself, quickly. Um, I mean, Infernal, great opener, isn't it?
Yeah, Infernal Death. I mean, like I said, I'll talk more about what I specifically think about the album, how much I like it or dislike it or whatever when we get to ranking it. But I mean, some of the standout tracks, obviously, that you mentioned, Infernal Death, Zombie Ritual, one of the most iconic Death songs. Mutilation is great, Baptized in Blood, Evil Dead, the title track. I mean,
Denial of
really,
Life.
the whole thing from start to finish is fantastic. It does exactly what you
Oh
want
yeah.
to. If you just want some hard-hitting, old-school, gory death metal, like you can't do much
Yeah,
better than this
gore.
album.
I agree. It's a gem, isn't it? And it's also historically, contextually, really important.
Yeah,
For death metal and extreme metal as a whole.
it's one of those moments in metal where it's like it changed it.
Yeah.
I think
For
like
sure.
it's the equivalent of like the first 2 Sabbath records, or like the first couple of Judas Priest albums. It's that level of like, okay, this is moving forward. This is what metal is.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I think it's really important to understand if it's a point. Like, imagine being in '87 and hearing this. Imagine your
Yeah.
face melted at the time because you probably haven't heard anything like it.
I can imagine because it did pretty well, didn't it, when it came out? I think like a lot of people weren't really used to death metal. I think people who liked stuff like Possessed would have really liked it. People who are
Yeah.
into thrash metal might have at first been a bit like, "Oh, this is pretty extreme," but then over time, they probably would have been, "Oh, actually, I quite enjoy this," you know.
Yeah, and I feel like it kind of did divide the extreme metal community more. Like, though there were the extreme bands trying to push it further, and scenes like think of Celtic Frost, or you think of Venom or
Like
Bathory,
Bathory, yeah,
especially. Though Bathory was probably not as big as those two at the time, but still big to a degree, especially in Europe.
yeah.
And even other bands like Creator or Sodom, like the early versions
Mm,
of themselves. There was people out there looking for extreme stuff to come out, wanting things to be pushed and stay extreme. But I also met people who were like, I didn't like it. It was too much. I just like to stick to the facts.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
when they started screaming down the vocals with death metal, they just thought it was too much and just stopped. It really depends on the person. And there were, it probably did a bit of dividing.
yeah. But then there was an audience for it, and who really enjoyed it, and that's how
Yeah.
Death were able to continue with their legacy.
Yeah, and I feel they didn't get stuck in it either. Like they didn't just kind of become they are a legacy band, but they weren't like a legacy band in terms of like they made the first two albums and then they kind of just became a legacy from that death metal period of the early
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
They kind of went with the time and pushed forward. So like when death metal was becoming more stale or more samey and predictable, Chuck was like, "No, I'm pushing it again," and that's a common theme with all of Chuck's albums coming in.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
he's always pushing the whole thing, like his musically, like he kept pushing the death metal as a whole and metal in general. And
yeah,
I think
and
that's what made Death stay relevant and Chuck stay relevant, where other bands kind of
yeah,
got faded away a bit
they were
more.
always like really ahead of their time, and that's something I'm going to talk about more, especially with like some of those '90s albums.
Hmm.
How, but he was always pushing. He was always like probably about 3, 4, 5 years ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I can't really say much else. I mean, he was a fantastic songwriter, and I think it helped in being around a lot of great musicians.
He did kind
You
of get
know.
to that point where he was just like, who do I want in my band? And he could pretty much choose whoever he wanted because everyone, he wasn't necessarily
Yeah.
the most famous metal musician on the planet, but he could say, I believe the guitarist from King Diamond's solo band played on, I want to say Human. It was either Human or Individual Thought Patterns. But he was just like, he got told one day, he came off tour with King Diamond and someone said, oh, this kid in Florida wants you to join his band. Oh, who's that? Oh, he's called Chuck Schuldiner. And apparently just went, oh shit, from Death? I'll do it. Don't have to pay me, I'll
No,
do
there you
it.
go.
Because he had that much, in the metal world, people had that much respect for him.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's all I gotta say really. I think we should move into Leprosy now.
Yes.
Because we're getting ahead of ourselves about the Chuck
Yeah.
dynamic here, and I think we'll go with the flow. We'll go with the flow of chronology. So we'll
Yeah.
move on to '88 with Leprosy.
Quite soon after Scream Bloody Gore, wasn't it?
Yeah. Sorry if I'm saying a lot. My brain's really fucking fried today, so I apologize to everyone. It's like I'm
Most
trying to
of
talk.
podcasts, I reckon someone should cut together an average episode of any podcast and just cut together all the ums, ers, and ands, and you know what I means, and it'll probably be about half an
Yeah.
hour.
It's just like a whole movie of. It just feels like a Jeff Goldblum movie.
Just,
Yeah.
just Joe Rogan going, "That's crazy," for like 10 hours straight.
Yeah.
Look at the size of that thing. Have you tried DMT?
Yo, look that up for me.
It's not as bad as Dave Mustaine going on Infowars and trying to like sell boner pills.
That was fucking weird.
Like,
Fucking
what
Dave
are you
Mustaine.
doing?
To be fair, a lot of the metal giants like Dave and Tom Araya and all that, they all kind of fell heavily from their original roots. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Yeah,
And just became Telus dogs, but that's a different story. They just
but
betrayed their own.
yeah,
But anyway,
but leprosy.
leprosy. And then with this new, they start with a new incarnation, and then they once they
Again,
again.
this will be a theme
uh,
going forwards.
didn't they So if I remember correctly, they or Rayford opted to stay and not move from San Francisco, didn't he? When Chuck returned to Florida,
I
brought Rick
think so.
Ross, Terry Butler, and Bill Andrews in. I think Terry Butler was the
Yeah,
bassist. Rick Ross still came back again as guitarist. Bill Andrews was then on drums.
yeah.
All confusing. Was this for Leprosy? I think it was.
So for leprosy, yeah, it's similar to Scream Bloody Gore, where the bass player Terry Butler is credited, but he's not on the album. He didn't actually play anything. I believe
Okay.
Chuck did all the bass.
So it's on both of them. He did all the bass.
On the first two records, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure myself. I haven't looked this up, so I trust Ruben's judgment and see ya. Oh no, you are right. He didn't play bass. Yeah, I remember now. My brain went. Apparently, though, during the subsequent tour from Leprosy, is it right that Rick was kicked out? I don't know why, but he was kicked out. And then replaced by Paul Masvidal. Was that right, from Cynic?
Yeah, this was before he was in Cynic. I'm not sure if he was on. Let me just check.
I don't know if he wasn't in Cynic, but he later made Cynic. But that was only for like a handful of shows, though. Like he didn't record anything.
Not yet. No.
No. He only played for a handful of shows during the tour. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
I think that's all as much as I know.
So, Leprosy. It's kind of a very similar style to Scream Bloody Gore. The songwriting is a little bit more sophisticated. The production is vastly improved. It's darker, I think. It's heavier. It's a bit more like. It's still kind of, like horror themes, but it's a bit more like. It's easy to look at something like Zombie Ritual and be like, oh, that's just far-fetched out of a book. But then you could look at something like Leprosy, the song, and think like, no, this is a real thing that happens. Or like, Pull the Plug, one of the most signature death songs, is based on a very real moral dilemma which happens in the real world. So you can see Chuck was starting to think about things, the horrors in real life.
And yeah, I remember seeing an interview with Chuck. I think it was from the early 90s. And he was talking about the evils of the world. And he was talking like, everyone wants to talk about demons and, and people from a religious aspect talking about Satan and demons and the evil entities. And he's like, he kind of had this idea where evil exists already and it's in people. People are evil. And I'm going to expose that said evil within my writing. I'm going to show you how dark humanity is, how evil humanity can be. And he did to a degree, and I commend him. Like sometimes people want to blame the devil, but really it's just humans.
It's just you. Yeah.
There is no demons or devil creating evil. It's you turning away from the good that's creating evil, really. That's what evil is. People who choose to turn away from the good. And I feel like he really showed that. So well done, Joe.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, like,
anyway,
with Leprosy, the legacy of Leprosy cannot be understated. It's one of the most important death metal albums of all time. So many bands have pointed to that album specifically and gone, this is like pretty much the pinnacle of old school death metal. I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that. It is really impressive how they were able to follow up, or how really Chuck was able to follow up Scream Bloody Gore with another album that was like, of more or less the same quality in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I'm not gonna put my feelings on how much if I prefer it more or less to the album.
Yeah.
Scream Bloody Gore, because I want to wait until I do the countdown for that, or the ranking of that. But it's still, I mean, we have to kind of acknowledge this before we carry on. We have to acknowledge the fact that every album is amazing. There is not a bad Death album.
This is the thing. I think I was saying this in before we had to pause recording. But I'll say it again. I can't think of any other band that has this many albums and they're all amazing. Yeah. Because there are bands out there whose like every single album is a masterpiece. Like Nirvana, I'd argue, Bleach, Nevermind, In Utero, all 3 albums are masterpieces. But we don't know if albums 5, 6, and 7 would have been as good. With Death, all 7 albums are pretty much 10 out of 10, just amazing records.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
When we get to ranking these, I may say this quite a few times about when we talk about the albums. I might use the phrase, "Oh, this is one of my favorite Death albums." That could be literally any of them. They're all one of my favorites. They're all that good.
And they made the list very hard to make as well when we do get to it.
It's a tricky one. Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm putting this as number 7, but like, it's not bad. You know what I mean?
No, it's
still great.
Amazing. Yeah.
Anyway, we've mentioned about Leprosy and Rick being kicked. Rick got kicked. I mean, would Rick Ross only appear on this album as guitarist, if I remember correctly, and Leprosy? Is that right?
I believe so. I think he was replaced on the next album.
Yeah, that's fair. So we go to Spiritual Healing in 1990.
Yeah.
Seeing Chuck kind of abandon a lot of the gore aspects of the band's, theme. More of a social critique approach, I would say, of the band. That was either would fire Rick Ross and have James Murphy do the album. I think this influenced the style of. I did mention this, but I'm going to mention it just one more time to keep it consistent. But I feel like James Murphy added the melodic edge to the band, and I think that helped change the sound a little bit more. Still keeping the death metal, but just that edge that this was needed. But during the tour, James wasn't fired. Leading to so this is where the things get really fucking weird. The year 1990, so like late 1990, things got weird for Death. We're gonna go in. I mean, we're gonna talk about the band, but I want to talk about this first because I think people are probably gonna be waiting for this. So obviously, during the tour, James was fired, led to a few replacements of guitarists. But first, Masvidal returned to play a few shows in April of 1990. Then Albert Gonzalez, is that Gonzalez? I'm not very good at that. Gonzalez. Sorry, I'm not very good at Spanish. So anyone out there who knows Spanish, feel free to, beat me up. Albert from Evil Dead took over afterwards between August and October. Right. But then after that, that's when Chuck refused to play Europe, didn't he? Due to poor management. He said due to poor management and organization, essentially almost creating a mutiny in the band after he decided not to do it because the remaining members did the tour without him, using members of the crew, road crew apparently, as stand-ins. While Chuck wasn't actually playing those last few shows at the end of the year in Europe. So it was like, how does that even work? Like, I can't. I'm kind of really struggling to feel like, how can you have Death without Chuck? It's like,
it would be like Motorhead without Lemmy.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't really know how it can work. It's like going to see Ariana Grande and there's no Ariana Grande. Really? It's like, I went to see Ed Sheeran and it was just Ron Weasley from Harry Potter.
Am I right in thinking that when that happened, obviously Chuck was a bit displeased when he realized they were going on tour without him with his songs, with his band. And he took legal action and then went, those people, they're not Death. I'm going to start a new band and call it Death. I'm taking the name back as my legal right. Was this around the time he started working with that lawyer who to this day
I
is
think
still
so.
did like the gardening of his estate? I forget the guy's name now.
I haven't looked much into the legal case, but I think this is when this was happening. So like the mutiny took place, and he got legal action going. I don't know the details of the case though. So
instead of literally kicking them all out, I think he basically just went, I'm now going to tell you legally you're not allowed to call yourselves Death. And he just hired all new members.
Essentially, yeah.
But
then that led into 91, didn't it?
Yeah, but with spiritual healing, like I'd still probably call it old school death metal, but it's definitely got a much more progressive kind of feel to it. Some of the song, I mean, the title track is nearly 8 minutes long with multiple sections and odd time signatures and stuff, and a lot of it's really like out there. At least for the time, it kind of felt like Chuck was pushing the old school traditional death metal sound about as far as it could go before someone just goes, that's prog.
Yeah, and I think spiritual healing at the time when 1990, where death metal was kind of, I mean, like, let's be honest, the heyday of death metal was kind of dying at this point almost. Some people were taking it further. So between 87 to about 89, there was that typical old school gory death metal, and then going into 1990 with other bands coming in like Cannibal Corpse and then Deicide coming in 1990 as well, and then going to Human in 1991 with Death. And during this time, bands were just trying to go like, let's see how gory we can be for the sake of it. I remember Chuck saying that he just didn't really see the point of being gory for the sake of being gory. He didn't really feel like it was him. What's the point of that? I wanted to express real life things. Express my real life thoughts and explore deep philosophical meanings within my music, and that's why he went in that direction and pushed himself in that direction, because he knew that was what he wanted to do, but it's also what death metal needed at the time, I feel.
Yeah because it informed my opinion later on what other genres would do, especially like technical metal and like progressive metal, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like lyrically and musically, he pushed like where death metal can be complex. We can make almost like kind of like creating the old version of tech death people really.
Yeah.
So it's not focused on being technical for the sake of being technical, I suppose you could argue. So he did technicality for a reason. Like he never. I felt like everything he did was for a reason. He always thought like, does this song need this? Does this song need that? Rather than just the sake of it. And I can really see that in his playing. So, take that as you will. But yeah, Spiritual Healing is great. The album covers always kind of made me laugh. So it's kind of like dramatic. You can tell what point he's getting across with the cover.
I always used to think, I didn't realize that on the cover he's sort of like holding his hand up, sort of thing, as if he's like praying. It's a televangelist, isn't it? Praying over like someone who's very poorly, let's say. I always used to think he was just slapping him on the head.
Let Jesus heal your son.
And that's why he's got that expression like that's why he looks so frightened, because he's just getting like his bald head just slapped.
This will heal you. This will heal. No, it's definitely mocking evangelicalism in America, and I'm not going to go into how much I hate America's form of Christianity. Very perverted, from my opinion. But I'm not going to go too much into that. That's a whole video in itself. But we'll stick to spiritual healing. No, it's still a great album. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Let's go to Human now. I think we should just need to to Human.
Yeah.
Great album, isn't it? Anyway.
It is quite a significant change. It still sounds like Death.
Bloody hell.
It's more. I'd describe it personally as technical death metal.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it's getting to the realms of tech, like with all the progressive
Yeah,
elements being placed into it.
it
Uh,
is a really significant evolution in the death timeline, and for me as well, considering this is the thing, right? 1991 now was actually a fairly long time ago. It was over 30 years ago, and you kind of
yeah,
realize that, like, this is the thing with death. You forget how long they were around because Scream Bloody Gore doesn't sound like it's nearly 40 years old. Human doesn't sound like it came out 33 years ago. And I think that's due to two things. One, people forget how young Chuck actually was. And
yeah, that's true.
two, people forget just how well, they don't forget. I still have to remind myself regularly, going like, oh my God, they were actually really ahead of their time. Chuck was well ahead of the curve. Like stuff like Human, he was doing stuff that bands like Meshuggah wouldn't do until like the mid 90s.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, really, it's a very modern sounding album, is Human.
No, I agree, and you can tell how it really changed the game and like for and metal in general.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously there was major shifts in Chuck's writing. But lyrically, he was going more for the deep philosophical approach, I'd say.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I mean, and obviously with the added technical and progressive elements, it really changed the sound for me personally, and
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. I think it's a great album.
Mm.
Um, I think it was one of those like it's contextually. I wish I was there to hear it for the first time and see the
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, I wasn't. Lack of comprehension is like one of my favorite deaths.
Yeah. I mean, the lineup just quickly changes once again.
Yeah,
It's
we're going to the
obviously
lineup.
Chuck on guitar and vocals, as per usual. I believe he wrote all the songs himself. Apart from, on some versions, there is a fantastic cover of God of Thunder by Kiss. It's amazing. If you haven't
Oh
heard it,
yeah,
go and listen to it. It's actually really, really good.
and we
Um,
also and obviously it won't be the first. It won't be the only time they cover another band's song.
oh yeah, we'll get to that. You've got Sean Reiner on drums, and this is, to me, not that the drummers on the first three records weren't great, but this is the first of three incredible master drummers that Chuck would
Yeah.
work with over the rest of Death's discography. Sean Reiner, I believe he passed away recently.
Oh
He
yeah.
died 4 years ago, at the age of 48, which is really sad. Incredible drummer. He and the other guitarist, Paul Masvidal, whatever, they both went on to then do Cynic, which was like
Yes, the
really. Human is technical, Cynic is really technical.
I wonder if Chuck's influence on the two musicians led into actual Cynic doing what it
Oh,
did. Maybe
absolutely.
I feel like
Yeah.
Chuck was kind of the catalyst for Cynic to be in existence, and Human was almost like them preparing to be in such a band.
Yeah, I really believe that if Chuck hadn't have done Human, then Cynic wouldn't have done Focus.
Oh, and we also forgot another a great musician, Steve DiGiorno, did join in to play chord bass
Steve
in that.
DiGiorgio, yes, fantastic bass
DiGiorno
player.
is
I think I'm
oh
seeing him soon.
brilliant.
What band is he in now?
Yeah, I don't know.
He's playing.
I guess that.
He's currently filling in for somebody. Let me have a look on his Instagram actually quickly. But yeah, great bass player. Really adds something to the album for sure.
Mm. Yeah, he's a
Steve.
fantastic bass player, Steve. He will really shine in some albums, including ones that may not be favorable.
So is he still in Testament, or did he leave?
Again, I wouldn't know.
Okay.
I haven't really looked at him in modern. I was too busy trying to research about him during the 80s and 90s. I didn't really research what he's doing now.
I just think I've got a feeling I'm like seeing him soon, or I have seen him. I think he joined Testament after I saw them. Um,
Do you want me to talk about the band members at the moment while you research it?
yeah, got them.
So he joined in on typical bass. He was in. He had commitments to see this though, didn't he? So he left before they
Yeah.
toured. For after the album, but then he was replaced by Scott Carino, and that's how you pronounce his name.
Mm.
But also a little fact as well. They had financial issues on the tour, so in 1982 they had to cancel a few UK shows as a result from that. If you didn't know, a little bit of trivia there. But
There you go.
there you
I
go,
don't know.
indeed.
I don't know if he's still in Sadus, but I am seeing Sadus this weekend at Bloodstock.
That's
So
cool.
hopefully he'll be there, and that'll be, for me, that'll be amazing. Well, I've already seen Gene Hoglan play, and that'll be someone else who used to be in Death I can cross off my list.
Yeah,
Because I
you could
mean,
be everyone's
I'm
list. Kind of see all of
I'm
the Deaths members.
yeah, I'm just gonna say this as well. Like, if there's there's a few bands I regret not being able to see because it was before my time. I would love to have seen Death back in the day.
Oh yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
In
have been
fact,
able. I wouldn't
I've
been
actually
able to, sadly.
yeah, I've actually got a story about that because I've got a friend at work who's a little bit older than me, and he saw like strapping young lads when they were going and stuff like that, and he said that he saw Megadeth around the late 90s, very early 2000s. That must be late 90s because they stopped touring after 98, did Death. And he said, yeah, Megadeth are really good. The support band are interesting. I can't remember what they were called. And I was like, oh, well, what sort of music was it? And he said, I think they were called Death. And I'm like, you've seen Death? Like,
That's
fucking hell.
crazy.
I was just like,
I think
what?
I'll be more excited by seeing Chuck than Dave Mustaine, if you want me to be honest.
Yeah. I think I honestly prefer Death to Megadeth these days.
I mean, I've always preferred Death to over Megadeth. No offense, Megadeth, but Death are better. I'm gonna say it. I don't care.
I'm inclined to agree. Like
I
you
mean, like, it's not
mentioned
me saying Megadeth is shit. I mean, the old albums are great. Dave
yeah.
Mustaine's a bit of a sellout, but we could talk about that another time. Um. Anyway,
So, like,
should we
you
go to the
mentioned
next album?
well, I want to talk about some of the songs quickly on Human.
Oh yes.
You mentioned
Sorry,
Lack of
my bad.
Comprehension. Lack of Comprehension is wow. Some of the other songs there that
Fantastic.
are really stand out. Flattening of Emotions, the opening track. Love that drum intro.
Mm.
Suicide Machine.
Yeah,
Together
that's
as
this
One.
lyrics in that are brutally cool. Suicide Machine.
I'm looking at these and going, which ones are the standout tracks? And the answer is all of them.
Yeah,
All
I
8
think the
songs are
one.
amazing.
If I had to choose my favorite ones, it's probably between Suicide Machine and Lack of Comprehension. Incidentally, being the ones that are next to each other on the album, but the rest, the
Yeah,
whole thing's fantastic. You know,
yeah.
together as one. Flat, like you mentioned, Flat Emotions. Cosmic Sea was cool.
Mm.
Vacant Planets. I mean, there's only 8 songs. I know each song is like, you know,
It's not too long, it's not too short. The whole album is 34 minutes. That's all you need.
yeah, it's basically bangers left, right, and center. I'm happy with a
Yeah.
34-minute banger, straight to the point, and it gets its job done. I don't really know what else to add. I won't add much else because obviously I do need to save some of it for the ranking.
Yeah. Yeah. So
But we'll move into individual four
yeah.
panels.
But I mean in 1992, they released a best of compilation called Fate the Best of Death,
Oh yeah,
which is
yeah. Sorry, I've skipped
basically
too far ahead.
yeah, well it's okay. It's basically songs from Scream Bloody Gore, Leprosy, Spiritual Healing, and Human. The first 4 records. It's I mean it's Death, so it's fucking awesome. Well, all the songs are great. On Spotify, they have the 2023 remaster of certain older songs, so some of them sound a little bit clearer, and it's quite cool hearing them mixed with like modern technology. There's a
Yeah,
few obvious ones that aren't on there, like Lack of Comprehension. Also, yeah, Lack of Comprehension isn't on there.
which
Neither
is
is
criminal.
yeah, neither is. Let me think. What else isn't on there? There's like Evil Dead isn't on there. Infernal Death isn't on there. Um,
I
you
mean,
know,
I can't. I'm not sure what. I haven't actually. I never really listened to the greatest hits on the basis that I just listened to the albums themselves.
yeah, I generally don't really listen to greatest hits albums.
Yeah. Only time I ever listened to greatest hit albums was like growing up, but younger, and I got given it on CD or something.
Yeah,
Listened to it.
because
But
that was before
normally
you
I
made
go
your own
for albums.
playlists. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like I mentioned, like I go into Deicide because someone gave me the greatest hits of Deicide, the first one, and or whatever. And I was like, okay, I'll listen to it, and I listened to it a few times, and that's how I got to know Deicide. So most of the songs I know from them are from more than the albums.
Yeah, yeah. So, individual thought patterns then.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what can I say? It's the first to feature Gene Hogan, which makes it basically one of the best things to exist.
Yep. Gene Hoglan, one of the most ridiculously good drummers ever.
It's
Just,
like almost it's like fish and chips with Chuck and Gene, isn't it? It's a perfect combination.
mm, or
You know,
indeed, well,
and
Gene, when he was in Dark Angel, I believe he left Dark Angel to join Death. And then later on, he would leave Death to join Strapping Young Lad.
yes, he did. I do like Strapping on Yan. I have a few of
Mm,
their songs. They're really good.
yeah.
I'll try not to make this as a Gene Hogan fanboy episode, but I'm probably going to gas him up a little bit.
He is, because I've seen him play live in Bristol when he was in
Well,
Testament. And fuck me, what a machine. Like,
I can imagine relentless
he's
double
just
bass,
insane to what. Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. They play like a 2 hour
And
set, and the whole time his feet are just fucking. They don't stop, and I'm just like,
yeah,
how?
I feel like obviously Steve returning as well was made was like a really good addition to the other two. If
Yeah.
if Chuck and Gene are the fish and chips, I think Steve's probably the mushy peas.
Oh, I don't like mushy
If you
peas.
were,
I'd say
see,
that. I'd say
I love
Steve's the
mushy
vinegar.
peas. Oh, okay, yeah, okay, okay.
Mm.
Vinegar's fine. I can deal with the vinegar.
There's also another
Um,
guitarist, Andy LaRoque.
yeah, from King Diamond we mentioned, didn't we earlier?
Yes, yeah,
Or
yeah,
was that yeah?
yeah. You're right.
Apparently, though, he couldn't commit full time because of being in King Diamond, wasn't it? So he was replaced by Ralph Santola, right?
Mm. Yeah.
For
Okay.
the European festivals and US tour anyway after the
Right. Yeah.
album, if I remember correctly. Um, but yeah, like it's a great album, and for the four patterns, I'm not again. I want to give my opinion compared to the rest. I won't give. I tell you what, I won't give out too much because I'm saving it for the
Okay.
for the ranking. But can we just appreciate how amazing the philosopher is?
It's put it this way: if someone said it's their favorite Death song, I'd go fair enough. It's not my personal
Yeah,
favorite. It's one of my favorites they've ever done for sure. It's an
yeah,
incredible song. It's
for
so
sure.
so good. Yeah, absolutely adore that song.
No, fantastic. Um, it's my favorite on the album. I'll keep it at that, but I won't go any more into the music or my opinion on the album. So I'm going to save it. In terms of facts, if you want to talk about like the members or whatever,
Mm.
um, Chuck was having argument with his manager Eric at the time, apparently, wasn't he?
Eric Grief, yeah.
Which he thinks, which I think Chuck said he thinks that's why the lyrics felt very angry on this album because of that going on.
Yeah.
Probably a way of, a form of catharsis in his writing with the real world going on around him. Sometimes your music can be a product of your environment, I find, at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and obviously the philosopher being one of Depp's biggest songs was probably a big moment for Chuck, and obviously there was a European run later in the year where Craig Lothiero replaced. Someone who did it replace? I can't remember now.
I kind of feel like I've never really looked into what the philosopher is actually about. But to me, it sounds like it's basically going, oh, you're the philosopher, you know so much about nothing at all. It kind of just makes me imagine you're on a night out and this guy's just talking shit, like absolute bollocks. And those sort of really overconfident guys you meet and they just talk stuff and you're like, every word that comes out of your mouth, I don't buy any of it. You're just talking rubbish.
They call it word salads, don't they? So you got those
Verbal diarrhea.
Verbal diarrhea is a word for it. I've come across them, and they easily manipulate it to people because they know that they use big words and words that are vague or got many different meanings, and I think they purposely make this word salad with all these words to kind of make it seem like they're intelligent and they know what they're talking about. Not realizing philosophy is not like that at all.
Yeah. I saw someone said something interesting about Stephen Fry, and he said he's a really, really good pseudo-intellectual. Like he behaves a lot smarter than he actually is. Most of the so-called like interesting facts and like research that he's done is like, yeah, you could read that on the first page of Wikipedia. It's not really research, is it? You just have a refined English accent and you wear tweed suits, so you sound smarter. But Stephen Fry is also like really misogynistic, so I'm not gonna talk about him anymore.
I didn't actually know.
Oh that. Yeah. I believe so. He has a problem with. Obviously, he's gay. He doesn't like women. Like he dislikes women. I think that's really like. Ugh. And I believe he's come out being very supportive of J.K. Rowling, which makes me think, ooh, no.
I don't know that. Yeah, and I think there is a word where you kind of believe someone purely on their appearance rather than anything else. So like, it's gone out of my head, and sorry to anyone who doesn't know the words, but basically the point is that, for example, the best one is for this is fitness. And this really portrays the Sun philosophy well, where you have fitness influencers who don't know shit about fitness or shit about health or shit about anything like that. They don't know absolute crap about it, but they look good and you believe them because they look good. But the reality is that most of them, right, are on drugs. They're using filters, right? Do you know how many people in the influencer world are using PEDs? I guarantee you, it's fucking all of them. But and you've seen them on their best days. I guarantee when you see them, they've probably just done a huge workout, got the pump going to look leaner than normal, and then doing all sorts of lighting. Ben Carpenter did a good video on that about exposing how they do all that. But they're full of crap. And the thing is that they know they're full of steroids, but they're not going to exude their reputation. So they think, oh, actually, I got big from eating broccoli and rice all the fucking time. I'm working out 7 days a week, doing 45 minutes of wrecking the fucking weight around. But no, you have not. You took some steroids and you think you're fucking a guru.
A lot of it is just genetics as well. Some people are just naturally big or naturally skinny. And so I've met skinny people who eat like a fucking, I don't know, like a hippopotamus, and they don't get any bigger. They're always like skinny. And I've met people who are really, really strong and fit, and they try and eat really healthy, and they're like a fucking house, but they're just big and strong.
True. Your metabolism will always differ.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not
just not if it's genetics, but
fish
I do
believe. And a rice cake.
Oh god, that I'll have a fish and a rice cake. Then I'll go on the train. I'll have a fish
and a rice cake.
Oh no, a lot of people blame genetics. A lot of people try and use genetics as an out, but a lot of people who claim to have good at genetics, a lot of the time the genetics can be poor. They just use drugs. The reality is that the so-called genetics they claim to have is like less than like 1% of the population, maybe less than half the 1% of the population, which doesn't represent anyone else. It's all crap. Like, no, and also there's only so much genetics can give you. I'm not being funny, but if you put on 200 pounds of muscle, that's drugs, not genes.
Yeah.
You can fuck off. Anyway, I'm keeping that aside. That's basically the philosopher to me feels like those people who, because they know they can get away with how they look and people believe how people look, feels a bit like that. You kind of, the image, you give off the image so people believe you, but you don't know shit. So
Yeah.
well done for Chuck on that one. That's why Chuck's my favorite. Anyway, I'm going on to Symbolic now. Rant over. I'm really sorry.
Okay.
Well, great album. Fucking phenomenally good. Gene,
Yeah.
again, just even better than it was before.
Yeah.
He's like refined himself. He's gone from a normal fish to a battered fish on the fish and chips. So
He's actually, the individual thought patterns was like fish and chips, like a nice battered cod and some chips. Symbolic is you have that and a battered sausage.
ooh, yeah.
So,
No, yeah, definitely. So great, and it's some like extremely like high quality cod in that batter as well.
Yeah, with a side of
Um,
sausage.
yeah. And I feel like Gene Hogan is probably the most shine in this album. I don't know if I mentioned before, but I know that Gene and Chuck had more time to write with this album. They had ability to have a studio and write the parts like together more, and I feel like that really showed in this album compared to individual. Not going into too much about it, but I do want to mention that, and I feel like this it really pushes out as a result.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure.
you
I
can
mean,
hear the dynamics.
Yeah, there's two more members again. Bobby Coble,
Coable, I think Coable,
yeah,
Kettlebell.
Kettlebell.
I don't know.
I
Bobby
don't know what else
Kettlebell and Kelly
he's
Colon.
been in.
I don't know actually.
Death seems to be by far the most well-known project he's been involved with.
I don't actually know much about
He
Cobell.
teaches jazz at the University of Florida. He's a
Oh.
professor of jazz at Rollins College. He was a visiting professor at Seminole Community College. So basically, he's more of a jazz and funk player. But because those people are really, really talented, Chuck was just like, a good bass player is a good bass player. Come and play on my album. Which is, I guess I'd call Symbolic like, I'd call it progressive technical death metal.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I feel
extremely progressive.
The reason I would call it progressive technical death metal as opposed to technical progressive is that the emphasis is it's very technical, but it has progressive elements. So it's technical death metal, which has been put through the filter of prog, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I feel like the guitar is not as technical as individual four patterns, but the drums are more technical compared to it. So it's like one kind of a sacrifice for the other. The guitar is still technical and progressive. For me personally, I feel like the album. How do I put this into words? Yeah, it's. I feel like it was because of the rehearsing between Gene and Chuck. I do feel that they were able to work together more. So like Chuck knew when to stop being complicated for Gene to have his room, and then Gene knew when to take it back so Chuck can have his room with either vocals or guitar. I think of Crystal Mountain, where the main sort of melodic chorus. If you notice, the first time round, the drums are very chaotic with all that double ride and very, very chaotic and driven. But then the second time around, the drums strip back a little bit more. It's still heavily driven, but there's just not as much chaos, and that allows the vocals to come in. So you can see how they're working together more to complement each other more. And I feel like that's why this album is one of the reasons why it's so good.
Yeah, and I think one of the many reasons I just love Chuck as an artist, as a creator, is despite being as talented as he was, and despite essentially, he must have realized that Death is him. He is the face of Death, but he never had an ego about it. He was never like, "No, fuck you. This is my band. You do what I say." And in interviews as well, he's always talking about the other band members he's got at that time, saying, "Oh, I love this person. They're great at doing what they do." And I think I heard somewhere when he was working with Gene, rehearsing the material that he'd written for Symbolic, there'd be parts where he'd be like, "Look, Gene, I hired you because you're a shit hot drummer." please play some crazy shit. And he was just like, because you're so good, you can do crazy fills. I'll pull back on the guitar. And at the same time, Gene as well is immensely talented. But if you see Gene in interviews, he's always really, really humble, almost to the point of being quite a goofy character.
Yeah.
He's very Canadian. I don't think he's actually from Canada. I think he's lived there most of his life.
He's essentially the Keanu Reeves of death metal.
Yeah, basically. He just seems like such a nice guy. But oh man, yeah, like it just comes across like both musicians were like very respectful of each other and knew that they had legacies. At this point, it was before stuff like Strapping and Deathclock and that. So Gene wasn't as well known as he is today, but he'd already done stuff like Dark Angel. Before he did Dark Angel, he was he worked for Slayer. So he was very well respected in the metal scene, and that's why he got to play on the Death albums. But you really get the sense that they're both just focusing on what does the song need to sound like. When does it need to be technical? When does it need to just be a song?
They're really, really good. Really shines through with those two writing together.
You've also got
obviously the rest of the band, like Bobby and Kelly, did do a good job. With what's going on.
Kelly Conlon.
Was Kelly the bassist?
Kelly Conlon. Yeah.
Conlon. Which is funny because that's my mum's last name. He's got the same last name as my mum.
Yeah.
But I obviously you don't take on your mother's last name. Is she related to it? I don't know. But probably not.
So apart from Death, he was in Monstrosity.
Yeah. At the point out is Monstrosity, and I think he's with Agent Steel now, isn't he?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. He's I think he's actually underratedly good. Like, don't get me wrong, I know Steve Levin went a bit of a sag. Steve's a very good bassist, but I think he did a really good job. Like I mentioned, like I'm going back to Crystal Mountain again, but like the bass underneath the melodic section of the chorus, like I mentioned, that sort of like 3-chord melodic thing going on. He kind of like he doesn't just follow the guitar, but like he kind of has these running notes in between the notes being played a lot, and it really complements the riff well. So I think he did some really good things.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Some great harmonies as well with that both Bobby added in with Chuck, but probably Chuck did most, and who knows.
And then again, I could harp on about standout tracks, but to be honest, it's the entire album.
It's brilliant from start to finish.
I mean, some are less good than others. My least favorite ones are probably like maybe 1000 Eyes, but even then, that's still the worst song on Symbolic is still fucking amazing.
Wait! 1000 Eyes is that's like one of the best ones.
I don't know.
I love that one.
But then I don't find it as good as the title track or Zero Tolerance or Crystal Mountain or Perennial Quest. But like I said, the worst one is still amazing.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like 1000 Eyes, I think one of the things that attracts me to it though mostly is the lyrics. Like, was it privacy and intimacy? I can't get my words out. Sorry, privacy and intimacy, as we know it, will be a memory among many to be passed down to those who never knew. Living in the pupil of the 1000 Eyes, so good.
How profound that we are now talking to each other through a screen.
Exactly.
Like 29 years on.
Chuck called it. Just saying. Yeah. Merging as a prisoner in the emptiness of time.
He just comes up with these great images, doesn't he? Just make you go like, really fucking metal.
Yeah, I know, it's brilliant. I feel like he did it better than George Orwell. Sometimes.
Perhaps.
So George Orwell did call it, despite the fact he's a bit of a weird person. But we won't go into that.
I mean, 1984 is an incredible novel. If you haven't read it, it's a really good book.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah,
it's good. And Animal Farm. Just shame he's a bit of a questionable person.
But yeah, that's Symbolic. So
that's Symbolic, yeah.
Did you know that after Symbolic, Death technically broke up for a bit?
Yeah, this was when we're going into the other side of Chuck, isn't it? Yeah. What happened? So basically, there was a temporary breakup, wasn't it? Chuck announced in early '96, about the time I was born. Actually, is it connected? I don't know, but
It's like, oh, he's bored now. We have to stop.
So he can't. Chuck's like, oh no, the world has been doomed. No, being self-censored away from that. Obviously, early '96 splits the band up. Well, disbanded, I suppose, and then he wanted to create a new project, Control Denied, after a disagreement with. It was after a disagreement with Roadrunner, if I remember correctly. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, which is why you don't often see Symbolic included in like box sets and things, because it's the only album on Roadrunner, and Roadrunner are like, we'd be mad to give that album away. It's one of the most important albums in our catalogue.
Literally,
it's the same thing.
It's
with
probably
like,
one of the best.
It's the same thing with like the rights to the Spider-Man films. Sony's never giving away that shit. Why would you do that? Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I get it. Business standpoint, I completely get it. However, I want to put out about Control Denied, because I don't really know exactly what happened with Roadrunner. Much to discuss. If you comment on that, feel free. But I wanted to point out as well that if you didn't know or not, or anyone watching didn't know, he did talk about the idea of this actually much earlier anyway. As early as '92, if I remember correctly. He talked about in an interview with I can't remember where it was, but it was in an interview anyway. He wanted to form a more melodic band. It was after the 1992 tour, but decided to put it on hold. He was talking about it after the tour. So you can tell, like, this point, he kind of was thinking, I want to kind of stem away a little bit from the death metal and focus on more of a melodic, progressive thing anyway. He also started talking more about the idea in a '95 interview in Guitar World, and he expressed wanting a singer with a more of a standard, more powerful voice. He mentioned about a singer like Ronnie James Dio type of idea. He also stated that he started writing riffs for Control Denied in '95 after touring in Japan. Again, even before the breakup happened. As well, Gene obviously mentioned that he apparently was displeased with the record label leading to the Death breakup. So, like, Gene mentioning that about the Roadrunner situation, we'll have to put out there. So he was probably like, Gene probably knew it was like happening in the background a bit.
Yeah.
And Chuck was probably like, okay, this is probably going to happen at some point, so I'm going to start writing the riffs for this now and get this geared up now, so when it does happen, I'm a bit more prepared.
Yeah, like, and I feel like, I've never heard of Gene Hoglan being kicked out of a band. I've heard that he leaves because he's always in demand. He always wants to go and do new stuff. I think Chuck would have wanted him to come back for the last Death album. But by that point,
I think it would have been good.
Yeah, I think by that point, Gene he's like, well, I'm in Strapping Young Lad, and at that point they were touring the world, and he's also doing albums with Devin Townsend then as well, like his solo stuff.
Yeah, true. So I can understand him not coming back.
Under contract and too busy. Yeah, and in Gene's mind, he probably thought that Death weren't going to come back.
Yeah, so it's a bit of an interesting point, because like Gene's probably thinking this is a bit uncertain, so I'm just going to go with something more stable and just stick to it, which is probably a good call in the long run, because like if you're strapping young lad and working with Devin Townsend was probably a good stable thing at the time for him to do.
You would think so. There's it was a very chaotic time for him, because almost as soon as Strapping became massive, Devin said, "I don't want to do it anymore." And apparently, he says at the time, he's friends with Gene now, but Devin said in his podcast, at the time, Gene Hoglan was fucking furious.
And I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I don't want to imagine what Gene Hoglan looks like angry, but I imagine it's like a fucking bear or something.
I imagine one of those guys like it's really hard to get him angry, but when he does get angry, you know he's angry. It's that he sounds like that type of person, though he's
Yeah,
emotionally mild and nice. It's usually the ones that
yeah,
are always mild and nice that if you push them so far, they will turn almost the opposite.
yeah.
Anyway, the point. I mean, obviously, I don't know much about strapping. I am going to look into them more in future videos because I know Ruben wants to talk about them. So thanks for clarifying that, Ruben. Either
Yeah.
way, going back to a band I actually know a bit about. um, uh, Death and Slash Control Denied. So we mentioned that he already had this gearing up. Um, so obviously the new group first featured a vocalist called BC Richards. Who, let's be honest, has probably got his name from the BC Rich guitar, but we won't talk about. He left in '97, didn't he?
Mm.
BC Richards. There were other members at the start as well, like there was Shannon Ham, Chris Williams, he was the drummer.
Yeah.
Scott Clavidorin again on the bass. But then being replaced by Brian Brenson again. Brian Benson
Mm.
came in after Scott. And then Richard Christie, sorry, would replace Williams later on too.
Yeah.
And then they had another singer, which was Tim. Is it Aymar?
Amar, Imar, yeah.
Aymar? I'm not sure. Just call him Tim. Uh, After Richards, and obviously he became the main singer when they made the first album, The Fragile Art of Existence.
Mm.
Apparently, Rob Halford was in the running, which is interesting.
Well,
Plus another singer called Warren Dane from Nevermore
oh yeah, okay.
almost came in apparently, but the scheduling didn't work out very well because of his commitments to Nevermore, so
Sure.
he didn't join in the end. But I also as well that I'm or Tim other band which were called Psycho Scream. They had a guitar. No, no, sorry. His other band had a another bandmate called Psycho Scream, not the band. Getting confused. He had another bandmate from another band called Psycho Scream is his nickname. He was the guitarist, and he also wanted to join, but Chuck already selected Ham as guitarist, so he denied it.
Mm.
He apparently intended to get Andy LaRocque on board, but he denied it due to lack of a label in being a hindrance. He was worried about being a hindrance with the lack of label, so he didn't decide to do it. Apparently, but that's up to them. That's the kind of the
Interesting.
rocky history going on here. But eventually the band fully formed and then they released The Fragile Existence in '99,
Yeah.
year after Sound of Perseverance, ironically. Despite the fact he formed the band and broke up Death before the Sound of Perseverance.
Yeah. I mean, the story goes, because I've actually got some words written by Shannon Ham here next to me.
Oh yeah.
Talking about that period, because he was in both bands. He was in the last incarnation of Death, and he was in Control Denied. Apparently, they got together and wrote some demos, which initially weren't meant to be specific songs for Control Denied or Death. They were supposed to just be ideas for a singer to sing over, and they'd see if it would work before they decided to start writing the real sort of Control Denied material. And eventually, when they got together with, I believe, Tim, and they started writing
Oh
demos for
yeah,
Control
yeah.
Denied, some of them got split off because Chuck. It says here that Chuck knew that the fans in the industry wanted another Death album, so he went, "Fuck it, the heavier ones can be another Death album." And
Yeah, okay, I see.
you know,
Makes
that's
sense.
kind of how the Sound of Perseverance came about, which is the final. It would be the final Death album.
Okay. I didn't know that actually.
That's
I
kind of
mean, I
why
suppose the
Control,
more
the Fragile Art came after Perseverance, because Chuck was just like,
yeah.
you know what, I'm gonna do another Death album for the fans and the industry, one more one sort of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I don't really know what to add on to that, but yeah, no, I mean it makes sense as well because when listening to both bands, let's
Yeah.
say, you can tell that they're very influenced by each other.
Well, I mean, it's
Um,
literally, apart from Tim Amar, it's the same band. It's the exact same lineup.
yeah, yeah, you can, but I mean, got maybe that wrong. I meant like you can tell that there's a lot of crossover between the two because it's
Yeah,
all Chuck, and you can kind of tell Sound of Perseverance because they went through this major change in sound. But I think the major change in sound from Sound of Perseverance became from Chuck trying to change Death and getting rid of Death and making a new band with a change in sound in the first place. But
mm,
then adding the Death twist when they released Sound of Perseverance, I feel like that's why it kind of stands out of all the rest of the Death albums, but at the same time, it
yeah,
still sounds like Death. That's what I
yeah.
was trying to
I
say. Sorry.
and that's why I get some people say that they don't like Sound of Perseverance as much as other albums because they kind of say it doesn't really sound like Death anymore. And I think it does. To me, I look at Death's discography as like the first three albums, Scream Bloody Gore, Leprosy, Spiritual Healing, are kind of like a trilogy. But aesthetically, they
Mm,
look similar, they sound similar. Each one is an evolution from the last one. And then the
yeah.
second, like trilogy, if you will, is Human, Individual Thought Patterns, and Symbolic. Symbolic isn't very dissimilar from Sound of Perseverance, but to me, those three albums, Human, Individual, Symbolic, is like,
Yeah.
again, the artwork for those three albums is very similar. They almost look like they belong together. And I kind of feel like
Mm,
sound wise, again, it was Chuck starting a new style on Human, progressing it until Symbolic was pretty much that. Not a lot in Symbolic sounds very different to Human or Individual Thought Patterns, but it's like Chuck took that style he worked with in those previous two records and just perfected it for Symbolic. And then Sound of
yeah.
Perseverance was like, again, a new version of Death. It sounds different again. And this is,
Mm,
I think it's fair to say, this is where they went full progressive death metal. I'd call it technical progressive death metal because it's more progressive than it is technical, but it definitely has very technical elements to it. Like the drumming on Sound of Perseverance, Richard Christie is ridiculous.
oh, Christie's fantastic. Yeah. I mean,
I'd
when he
even
played
say
the 1988 gig that he played live, he's phenomenal.
the Dynamo Festival in Eindhoven.
Dynamo,
It
that's it.
was, yeah, and it's all on YouTube. It is amazing. It's a great set list.
Yeah,
The performance is amazing. The
I've
what
watched
do
it
you
a
want?
few times
It's an
myself.
amazing death show. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Mm,
Um, and again, for 1998, this was before, like, I mean, you had like Tool doing Anima in '96, which of course, is pretty proggy, but it predates Lateralis. It predates Blackwater Park by Opeth. So it's
yeah, I
really
think
ahead of its time again.
also it really inspired later metalcore bands. I feel very heavily. Like
Yeah,
if you think of
yeah,
the song Spirit Crusher, for example, there's a
yeah,
riff in Spirit Crusher that sounds a lot like the riffs that you see in metalcore. Like if you think of that typical stuff like the Unholy Confessions riff from Avenged or those like
yeah,
riffs like
yeah,
Attack and so forth, where you have that sort of that typical very metalcore style riff that I think kind of
yeah,
stemmed from things like Spirit Crusher. Though we would
yeah,
argue that sort of the soul really inspired metalcore as well. Don't get me wrong, but the Son of Perseverance I think definitely had a say in it, especially with
oh
Spirit
yeah,
Crusher more than anything else.
yeah.
And also influenced later
Uh,
melodic death acts like Children of Bodom, for example. Like you can really hear that they're influenced by this. You're right there, Rubes. You gone a bit
it's saying, well, Symbolic and Sound of Perseverance. What's happened? Can you still hear and see me?
Yeah, you went a bit funny on the video.
I think the
Like,
internet went a bit strange there. Am
yeah,
I
so
am
you
I
might have to
okay now?
repeat again. Yeah, you're
Okay.
okay now. You might have to repeat though, because you sounded a bit like R2D2.
Yeah, that's fine. I forgot what I was going to say now. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's worth mentioning as well that on Symbolic, especially, and Sound of Perseverance, there's a lot of melodic death elements in there.
Oh, for sure. Melodic death elements, and last two albums especially, and obviously they must have really influenced melodic death to come after, like Arch Enemy, like Children of Bodom,
Yeah,
and so forth. And then even later back acts like that are just general metalcore, like a Consumer Road or Parkway Drive or Attack. And I'm not saying I'm massively into metalcore myself. I think there's only real one metalcore band I actually like, but um, this is not me saying it's better or worse. It's just I'm not. into it, but you can see how it influenced it, and it was important for as an influence.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's all I kind of have to say on the influence of sound effects. Anyway.
So do we want to kind of talk about? I guess we can. Excuse me. We can mention Fragile Art of Existence. I've got to be honest.
I think here we have to.
I'm not really a big fan of it. I think oddly enough, which defeats the point of the album. I know. I kind of felt like I'd rather just hear Chuck singing Chuck songs. I wasn't massive on Tim's voice, and I kind of feel like it's not. I don't know. Who knows how good the rest of the albums may have been? Because I know he was writing a second Control Denied album before he died.
Didn't some of the songs got leaked in this year?
I'm not sure.
That were released, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
I'll look into that soon, but I'm pretty certain there was some leaks of it. And there was been loads of talks about finishing that album off to release it, but hasn't properly happened yet. My opinion, I actually quite like Control Denied. Yes, I agree. To a degree that like it's a bit weird without Chuck's vocals, but I actually don't mind Tim's vocals. I personally was fine with them. And I think some of the riffs and like Breaking the Broken is really good, especially with the bass. I think it was very good bass stuff. I enjoyed it personally. Yeah, I think I prefer Chuck's vocals more because I preferred sort of the death metal elements, but I don't dislike it either.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, so was it around 99, 2000 that Chuck first became ill?
Yeah, he was diagnosed in 99 with a I don't know how to pronounce it, pontine glioma. Pontine glioma, is that what we call it? It's basically a
Where is it? Let me have a look.
Glioma or something like that. Pontine glioma. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it's a type of brain tumor. If you want to put on more simple terms.
Yeah, it says extreme neck pain in 1999, and then he was diagnosed with pontine glioma on his 32nd
could be pontine.
birthday.
I don't know.
He found out on his birthday apparently.
Really, I didn't know he found out on his birthday.
Sad.
A bit of a sad. And he was only young. He was 32 when he got diagnosed.
Yeah.
It was his 32nd birthday.
Yeah, in 2000 he had surgery, which apparently was successful in removing the tumor, and he continued working on the new Control Denied album. In May of 2001, the cancer came back. And
its health really declined very quickly apparently in 2001. Like it was very rapid decline. Yeah. And then by December 13th, that's when he passed away. Yeah.
So loads of artists and his mother Jane, they put out a press release that calling for support from fellow artists, and bands like apparently Kid Rock did a benefit gig for him. Korn.
That's before Kid Rock went really weird, though.
Yeah.
So he was he was starting to get weird, but not as.
Yeah. So Kid Rock, Korn, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I saw about Chili Peppers playing it.
Yeah, it just goes to show how much respect he had in the industry outside of metal. Chili Peppers are massive band who sell out stadiums. They know who Chuck is and respect his legacy.
Really the fact that Kid Rock was originally a rapper.
Yeah.
Say something.
Matt Heafy said that when he was 15, he and his band at the time played a benefit show for Chuck.
Oh yeah.
Matt Heafy, of course, went on to be in Trivium, who are one of the biggest metalcore bands that ever existed.
Yeah, the Ascendancy is one of the most definitive metalcore albums.
Yeah, definitely. So there's an interview I found dated in December 2001 with Tim Amar from Control Denied. Basically, he was asked, "How's the new album coming along?" And his response was, "I don't know. Chuck's really ill." And like if you look at it's a bit morbid, but some of his last ever interview with Chuck, he doesn't look well. He doesn't
Mm.
look very healthy. And yeah, like you say, apparently his illness got really bad really, really quickly, to the point where he actually came home from hospital. He decided, and his family decided, that they'd rather just have him at home because he's not going to get any better. And then on 13th of December 2001, he passed away.
Yeah.
Which is
Which is sad. I mean, the fact that he
yeah,
was only 34, it's a really
yeah,
young age for that.
it's no age really. I mean, it is one of the greatest tragedies in metal that one of its most important voices was taken so young.
For sure. And such a talented person. I mean, he left a legacy at least, but
Yeah,
and that probably will live on way after his death.
yeah. There's
But it is still a sad thing.
yeah. Eric Grief says here he handled his legacy as president of the company, which is called Perseverance Holdings, which is an awesome name for a company for death. I'll just say that. Um, to this day, Jane and his sister Beth Shaldina frequently interact with the fans of the band, and they both said they actually enjoy the music, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
Apparently, his sister, her son Christopher Steele, currently owns all of Chuck's guitars.
No.
But I don't know if you know about this, but there was funerals, and there was a funeral, I believe, that was attended by several really big names, including Corey Taylor from Slipknot.
No, I don't know that, but I'm not surprised either. I mean, like, let's be
Yeah,
honest, in metal, Death is such a important band. It doesn't even just not just death metal, but just all metal. It's like
yeah,
if someone from the Big Four died, it would be probably the same
yeah, yeah,
because this is so important, not just for thrash, but just metal as a entire thing. I
yeah,
think though, grieving it, the grief aside, we should probably go into the ranking. I feel like this is a nice
yeah.
transition.
Well, I just want to talk a little bit about the legacy. There have been multiple tribute bands over the time made of members who used to be in Death at some point. The current one is called Death to All, which has Gene
Okay.
Hoglan playing in it. They're doing a tour at the moment where they alternate, each show is like a different thing. One show is Scream Bloody Gore in its entirety, and then like
That's cool.
hits from the first three or the other two of the first three albums. The other one is they play Sound of Perseverance in its entirety, and they play hits from like Human, Individual Thought Patterns, and Symbolic.
Oh,
So
that's
I
really
really
good.
would like to see that.
No, yeah, that'll be amazing to see, especially seeing Gene play it. Like,
Yeah,
feel like
I
as
think
close
it's
as you can get.
Gene. I think it's Gene and Steve currently, and another ex-member.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, I mean, it's like the closest you can get, though, isn't it? I suppose, without being
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Sadly.
I think it's fine seeing a tribute band, because I don't really like them that much, to be honest. I think I'd go and see a tribute band if it was a band that I physically could never see, like the Beatles. I'd go and see that, or Type O Negative, or I'd go and see a Death tribute band, because Death sadly will never come back.
Hmm.
It died with Chuck, sadly. Although to be fair, the legacy, the music of Death is still here with us, so we can still enjoy and appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
But
think the fact is the legacy's there, and it's for you to enjoy
yeah,
and to be
definitely.
inspired by, and
Yeah,
at least Chuck left something for that.
yeah, yeah. I think we should do the ranking now. But first,
Yeah,
I do need to go for a wee.
I think I might need to do the same. So I'll do
So
that
I
and then
think
we'll
we
rank.
should have a very brief break and we'll cut this out.
Bye.